All right, guys, thank you for joining us today. Today we have a very special guest. We have Rahul Damania, who is an ICU doctor and a very big medical influencer and a step one, step two USMLE shelf prep guy. I've been following him for so long. I've learned so much from him just following him, and I know he's helped tons and tons of students. So it's an honor to have him on the show right now. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Rahul.
Karthik, thanks so much. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Rahul Damania. I am a pediatric critical care physician and also have this nerdy side passion about helping students excel and prepare for their USMLE exams with this kind of mindset or vision that it's not just about the exam, but it is taking it one step further and preparing students to clinically and critically think at the bedside, whether it's residency, fellowship, and beyond. So really looking forward to this episode.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming again. Why don't we just dive straight into it? So, how did you get started with prepping people for the USMLEs? And did you have really great tips? Did you do really well on it? What was your story?
Yeah, no, this is something that I've definitely been humbled to share as I've grown HYGURU, which has been the personal project that has encompassed a lot of my USMLE efforts. I actually started teaching because I realized that dedicated study was a very stressful time, as I'm sure you can attest to as well.
Yeah.
And what I found out that dedicated study was a period where I was kind of the most disciplined, so to say. I would be studying for long periods of time. I acquired a lot of knowledge, and that was the knowledge that empowered me for clerkships and even centers me today when I'm practicing clinically as an attending. But then what I soon started to realize is, coupled with this very stressful time, there wasn't necessarily a resource out there that gave you the systematic approach to how to prepare, how to apply the knowledge, and how to really actively recall some of the small details and concepts that are necessary for these high stakes exams, which are the USMLE exams in particular. So I always joke that when I was in medical school as an M4, similar to where you're at in your stage right now, I was at the back of the library and I would be tutoring any of my underclassmen for $20 an hour in the back of the library. And I would go take the proceeds from that tutoring and just go blow it at the local pub, essentially, with my med school roommates. But that seriously ended up evolving when I ended up my M4 year kind of going to all of the medical schools in the area, including my home medical school. And I said, hey, I want to teach a comprehensive USMLE course, but I don't want to just make it like rote memorization and going through the same lectures that the M1s and M2s went through during their curriculum. But I want it to be very innovative. And what that innovation really looked like was two things. Number one, making sure that I was integrating concepts, making links amongst concepts. And number two, focusing on active recall and vignette-based learning. How are these concepts going to be showing up on the actual exam? And which concepts are tested more, i.e. the high yield aspect of it? And that since blossomed to a model where I can not only teach in person at medical schools, which I did for quite some time, but now I'm doing it a lot more online. And that has been phenomenal because I can connect with wonderful medical students just like yourself.
Oh, that's great to hear. So I'm assuming you do this kind of worldwide for anyone taking USMLEs, right?
Absolutely. I actually
Okay.
am so grateful for the opportunity to connect with students, not only here in MD or DO programs, but
Uh-huh.
also the international medical graduate community. One philosophical mindset that I have is when we are all going on this path together in medicine, something like the USMLE ends up being a unifying thread. And that unifying thread is if I end up coming and having a meal with you, and I ask you one simple question, Karthik, tell me about your USMLE experience. You would have such a unique perspective of the emotions that went through it. And then I could share mine. And it is one of those things where no matter what training program you're in, you have this personalized story that is going to be your dedicated USMLE preparation time or how you learn for such a stressful exam. And I really center myself that this is going to be a message that all of us, or a language that all of us can speak together and can really improve patient care at the end of the day.
That's true. I totally agree. This is overall good for everyone, helping students get to that end goal of patient care. Kind of diving more into this, what is your best techniques? You've been teaching this, it seems like, for many years now. What are your best techniques for someone preparing for the USMLE? Is there something that you have that's like works for everyone, or is there custom stuff you give people?
Yeah, no, that's great. And I appreciate you highlighting my experience. Before I got on this podcast, I was like, how many years have I been doing this? And since my M4 year, so now that is going to be effectively going on 9 years because I did it
Wow.
all throughout residency and
Uh-huh.
fellowship. And a lot of my YouTube videos and the videos in my courses are actually in this dingy resident apartment that I would just have a microphone set up and my MacBook
Uh,
and highlight some of the concepts or go through some of the concepts in those videos, which I'm super grateful that it has garnered some traction as well. Whenever I'm approaching USMLE preparation, I always try to make it personalized as much as possible. I recently completed my master's in medical education, and one of the key themes or where the shift in medical education is going towards is something known as personalized medical education. And that personalized or even precision medical education is similar to what we're seeing in like genetics or epigenetics,
yeah.
where we're really trying to make sure that that chemotherapeutic agent that we're giving a patient, for example, is going to be very specialized for the genotype and the phenotype of that patient's cancer.
Yeah.
So I kind of think about that in a medical education lens when I'm advising or tutoring students for the USMLE. But I think
Sure.
that there are three overarching principles that
Mm,
I find very helpful, whether you're preparing for step 1 or step 2 CK.
sure.
The first one is to make sure that before you dive into all of the details, you end up creating some frameworks
Mm,
before you go into the small details. I think
okay.
if we look at, for example, a UWorld explanation, there's so much great content in that UWorld explanation after you do the question. But sometimes that content, especially if you're not as familiar with it, is going to be what we call a high cognitive load. And a high cognitive load means that there's a lot of information that basically overwhelms your attentional space. If you get overwhelmed in your attentional space, what ends up happening is that you can increase the amount of cortisol in your body and learning is not going to be as effective. So
Mm,
one of the practical things that I do is I say, hey, whenever you're going to be reading maybe first aid or you're going to be going through the question bank, first create a framework or look at the bold words to figure out what are going to be the key associations that you're going to need to make and really make the lighthouse towards that more high yield
mm,
information first before you
mm,
dive into the details. And then
okay.
once you dive into the details, you want to really make sure that you link it back to, very importantly, things that you already know. And that's called
Mm,
schema based theory. So,
uh-huh.
whenever you are going to come up to a concept like congestive heart failure, the
Yeah.
first thing that you want to do is you want to say, what does Karthik know about this? And what's his current worldview? And what did
Sure.
this question or what did this video or what did this reading teach me new? And the
Mm,
more that you can create a framework where you're coaching yourself, this is new, this is old, and here's how I'm going to link it. That's the
yeah.
first principle, is starting with the framework and making those links. The
Got it.
second framework that I use for USMLE preparation
Uh-huh.
is testing yourself sooner than you think. A
Mm,
lot of students have this mindset that, oh, I have to do all of the content review. And after the content review, after I learn it, I'm going to rehearse it. And then only will I assess myself.
yeah.
And I think you have to be thinking about assessments in two categories. And the medical education literature really focuses on this. The first category is going to be summative assessments. These are like the ones that you're taking UWorld Self Assessment 2 or NBME 28 or NBME 7, whatever. Whenever you're taking a very high stakes practice exam, that's called a summative assessment that is going to encompass a lot of information.
Mm,
One of the key ways to improve on the USMLE is to focus a lot more on formative assessments. And formative assessments are like progress blocks. For example, doing focus questions in a certain organ system, or maybe linking a few organ systems together so you get that interleave practice. But a lot of students don't necessarily lean into assessment questions early. And that then causes a lot of stress later on because they're just not able to put the pieces of the puzzle together in a timely manner. So the second key principle is you need to start testing yourself sooner than you think. And remember that learning comes outside of your comfort zone. So your goal is to make sure you start getting very comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that is going to really excel your comfort level with this exam. And thus you can perform when you walk into Prometric. And then finally, the third principle that I use is you have to create a systematic approach because the brain loves organization. Think about your brain like a computer. If you are going to have a desktop that is going to be very cluttered and there's no folders, there's not going to be any sort of rhyme or reason on how you're going to organize it, what's going to happen? Well, you can't get efficient output. You'll spend hours looking for that one little file or that one little screenshot. And so whenever you're going to be learning and doing your USMLE studying, make sure that you're very prescriptive with the process of how you go through certain elements of studying. For example, create a systematic approach on how you review UWorld questions or NBME questions. For me personally, I've really advocated to use a platform like Notion, which is a great note-taking software that you can tag your mistakes, your comfort level. You can tag whether or not this is something that you know, whether you don't know, organ system, etc. So I think that being systematic and constantly refining the system that you are learning under or with is going to be very important, because if you end up doing like reading for one, if you do videos for another, if you do like flashcards for a third, you do some questions you're reviewing, some questions you're not. If you feed your mind in an unorganized way, you're literally going to get a unorganized or not as efficient output.
True, true. I like that. Those are really good key points, especially number two. I personally go by that myself. I'm like, just test yourself, get yourself uncomfortable, and start getting that like, okay, where am I weak? What do I not know? Even if it's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I really agree with that. But I want to dive in a little bit about that. So you said these three key points. This is great for someone studying. I feel like this is great for someone studying dedicated, especially. But what about those people that are like in the middle of school? And nowadays, some schools are not even given that much dedicated to study. How are these people going to be doing this during school? Because that's a question I get a lot. It's like, I don't have time to do this during my school time. I can barely do like 10 year old questions a day, if that. Like, what is
Yeah,
your advice to those students?
absolutely. And before we kind of tackle that, I think I want
Yeah.
to really emphasize the role the institution has in
Mm-hmm.
facilitating optimal preparation. And I think that now curricula are definitely recognizing that if we don't address the elephant in the room, which is this really important USMLE exam, and we don't necessarily be transparent with our students that not only are we preparing you for clerkships, but we are
Yeah.
preparing you for this exam. And trust us, we got you. If you don't develop that transparency, guess what ends up happening? The parallel curriculum. And that is exactly what you were highlighting is, well, I go to school, but well, I have to do this on my own. Well,
Yeah.
why is that? Because the school necessarily doesn't have at times the optimal delivery
Mm.
that is innovative, that is engaging the modern learner. The modern
Mm.
learner may like more fast paced in terms of quick transitions in lectures. The
Sure.
modern learner may not like the sage on the stage where I come in with 100 PowerPoint slides and I get 50 minutes and I just ram through them. The
Yeah.
modern learner likes a lot of context where they have a finite amount of pre-work and then they come in and they're engaging in a very interactive way that captures their attention. And
Sure.
so, whenever you are thinking about preparing for the USMLE in conjunction with your school material, what you want to do is you want to try to finish a lot of the USMLE preparation, whether it be videos like Pathoma, for example, or the
Sure.
question bank UWorld in particular, while you are in that organ system module. The
Mm.
more that you can utilize these third party question banks, RX, Amboss, UWorld, and go deep in testing yourself based on what the school is covering, that's going to help you excel. And one of
Mhm.
the things that I've incorporated at my institution is something known as the UWorld Learning Platform, because I have found that it is so important for faculty to not necessarily spend time writing these questions. UWorld does it better than me and my partner and everybody combined.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I've done is I've imbibed or integrated the UWorld learning platform where I look at a lecture, let's say antiarrhythmics, and
Sure.
I go and look at all of the cardiac pharm questions that are antiarrhythmic oriented, and I push it to the students right after the didactic session. And I think that that has really helped because students are like, oh, wow, they're using something that I want to use, which is UWorld. Well, many students use UWorld for their USMLE preparation. And now we can longitudinally prepare. So unfortunately, at times, it's so individualistic based on the medical school curriculum, but you may have to create your own parallel curriculum just so that then you feel more confident leading up to dedicated study.
Gotcha, gotcha. Thank you for answering that. You seem to have a lot of knowledge on this medical education space. I know you've done this for 9 years, but out of curiosity, like, where did you gain all this knowledge from? Is this from hands-on teaching so many people and working with educators across curriculum, or did you like research specific stuff? I'm just curious. Where'd you learn this?
Yeah, no, I think that it's a combination of many things. I do want to say that I've been grateful to have wonderful mentors who have
Okay.
really allowed for me to garner opportunities, whether it's research based or even teaching oriented. For me,
Mhm.
one of the things that I've centered myself is that in order to be really good, you not only have to put in the effort, but you have to have the reflection. And one of the reflective points is how can I always be better and serve students better and serve this space that I'm in better? How can I innovate? I keep asking myself, how do I do that? And
Sure.
I have just been relentlessly obsessed with making sure that I can engage the modern learner, whether it's through a TikTok reel and providing value there,
Sure.
or whether it's going to be a course. And to be very honest with you, I'll be transparent with you, Karthik. I'm
Uh-huh.
so much more impact oriented than income oriented. And what I found out that even being an entrepreneur, the more that you focus on creating impact and value,
More
you
income. Yeah.
you end up exactly going hand in hand with the success. And this is just genuinely what makes me happy. So I
Yeah.
try to play a fine work-life balance, but
Yeah.
genuinely I am just always reading the most recent articles, looking at the YouTube videos on memory, and just trying to make sure that a student can prepare in a psychologically safe manner.
Very, very nice. Speaking of that work-life balance, I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you teach so many people, but you're a pediatric ICU doctor as well. How do you manage this? What's your like schedule like? How do you film stuff? How do you teach people? How do you go to the hospital? What is your schedule day to day like?
Yeah, day to day, it definitely depends. In the pediatric ICU, I'm an academic pediatric intensivist. So
Okay.
throughout the year or throughout the month, we can even look at. I end up taking weeks on service. So that is going to be where I'm going to be the daytime attending, kind of like a 7 to 7 role.
Hmm.
And what I love about that is not only the fact that I can deliver great bedside care, but I'm able to engage with the medical students, residents, fellows, APPs, the whole multidisciplinary team. And that has been absolutely wonderful. So that's kind of like 1 week out of the month. And that's where I'm very busy clinically. I
Sure.
also have to take night calls every month. So I have to take about 4 night calls where I go to the hospital and do like a night shift essentially until the morning. And
Uh-huh.
other times I'm really focused on doing more of the administrative stuff, what it is to be an attending and coordinating and collaborating with
Sure.
attendings to create care paths that improve our bedside care. Also, teaching at the medical school, I have some allocated time that the
Hmm.
institution has provided me to
Hmm.
help with medical education research and also help advise and teach medical students. And then the remaining time is the time that I really dedicated to social media and recording videos. And it's not uncommon. And I really have to credit my wife, especially for this support and my extended family, that it's not uncommon that on a weekend I am teaching and I'm serving students. And I have sometimes a hard shutdown time that, all right, now it's going to be family time. But I think that's the key when you're thinking about entrepreneurship is you have to go above and beyond. And
Yeah.
what that means is rooting yourself in a principle known as discipline equals freedom. My day starts pretty early. Frankly, it starts at 3:45 in the morning where I do my deepest work with no distractions.
Mm-hmm.
And having that consistency has led me to create this, and being relentless has also allowed for me to channel my energies in a very positive way that, for real, it doesn't feel like work sometimes. It just feels like my passion. And I'm really grateful to have the mentors who have really carved this into my purpose. And that is how I found my ikigai. I don't know if you've heard of that before, the
No,
ikigai.
man.
It's kind
No.
of like where the balance between what you're good at, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, and what is your personal purpose. And I do a lot of reading to kind of figure out what is my purpose and how can I be the most productive and serve humanity and society the best.
Interesting. Interesting. I love it. I love it. So deeper into that, like you wake up at 3:45. When are you trying to sleep then by? Like 8?
Yeah, I typically
Like,
have a pretty early bedtime. Obviously, that
okay.
fluctuates, but I like my early bedtimes because I am more of a morning Neanderthal, so to say, and I get the best work done in the morning. But I know
Uh,
everybody's chronotypes are different. But I don't sacrifice on my sleep. I don't sacrifice on my
okay.
sleep.
That's good to know because I'm an early person too, but sometimes it's like if I would sleep late, I gotta wake up late, and I'm not
Yeah,
gonna wake up early.
exactly. No, you're so right. I mean, early wake up definitely starts with the night before.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. One other thing that just came to mind as I'm talking to you, how have you perfected your voice? How have you perfected your charisma? I know you film a lot of videos too, but like the way you're talking is so great. It's just so fun to listen to you. It is something you've worked on, learned about.
I
Um,
definitely am very mindful on how I deliver the message and
uh,
how I can be the most succinct and the most organized. I was really grateful this past year to be a part of a TED Talk and
sure.
to create a 7-minute TED Talk, which I have posted on YouTube. It's all about what makes a clinician great. I
Uh-huh.
ended up going through like a whole year and a half training on public speaking. And so
Wow.
I don't know if it is a combination of that plus my personal reading. I also have this weird hobby of Bollywood singing and I perform
Oh,
at
nice.
weddings. So
Uh-huh.
I think that that's been a perfect storm. And I appreciate you saying that I'm a charismatic person. Sometimes I have those low energy states where it can be a lull, but this kind of conversation energizes me. And it's all thanks to you.
That's great. That's great to hear, man. Public speaking. Okay. So that's something I should note down. That's something I'm not that great on, work on. Um, Speaking of other things I need to work on, entrepreneurship is something that you've done now. You've done this for 9 years. You've grown this big, how do you pronounce it? HY Guru Prep? Or is
Yeah,
it
high
high,
yield guru or high
high?
guru. Yep.
Okay, high group prep. Okay. So how did you bring this up and like in terms of the business side of things, like how did you even make this into a whole kind of empire thinking? And are you the only one running this or are there other people, etc.?
Yeah, I definitely have a small and mighty team. The
Okay.
team that supports me really just helps me get things onto social media. But as you can see,
Okay.
I'm going to be doing a lot of the recording of the videos, which does take a lot of
Yeah.
time. I also
Sure.
do all the content curation. But
Yeah.
I have a great team that kind of helps me. It's about 3 or 4 people that kind of help me collate the content, figure out what are the content points that are really high yield. And genuinely, what I really like about all of this is I tutor students one on one. So
Yeah.
being on the ground level has been the number one secret to being successful as a brand in general. Because when a
Okay.
student comes to me and says, man, it's just focus that really has been challenging me, I now know that, oh gosh, maybe I should create some content on
On
how to
focus.
focus more. Or
Yeah.
let's say a student is struggling on glycogen storage disease. Well, that might be my next webinar. So it's really making sure that you listen to the end user, the customer, and
Sure.
that can really blossom your business because once you're obsessed with delivering value to your customer, there's a saying that says you only need 100 people to believe and pay for your mission, and you can make a living off of it. So how do you attract that first 100 people, and how do you serve that first 100 people? That's the first step in entrepreneurship, keeping a very lean mindset, making sure that you focus on the most essential things. What's the most essential thing for me? It's me, in the sense that I am the one who teaches very well, and that's my core, is teaching, and then just capitalizing on top of that.
Gotcha, gotcha. Thank you for that. I'll finish it up with three last questions. We'll go
Sure.
through them one at a time. First one will be like, someone taking USMLE right now, okay, or Comlex right now. What is the number one tip you would give that student at this moment?
Assess yourself early. Make sure that you're leaning into practice exams and reviewing the practice exams. Think about the practice exam, especially incorrects, as squeezing the juice out of an orange. You want to get every single concept down, including the incorrect answer choices, when you're thinking about an NBME.
Gotcha. Thank you. The second one, more selfish question for me. What is your biggest tip that you would have for me?
Biggest tip is, honestly, focus on staying in the present. Sometimes in medical school and in medical education, we think about a lot about what our future life looks like, and also what have been some of our past successes and mishaps. But just enjoying the present is really important. I love this quote. It is, tomorrow is a mystery. Yesterday was history, but today is a gift. And that's why we call it the present.
I love that. That was really great. The last thing we'll wrap up with. So we try to do this tradition on the show where a previous guest leaves a question for the current guest, and I'll have you leave a question for the next guest. But the question that was left for you is, what motivates you on a daily basis to like get up every day, on a hard day, on an easy day? What's the biggest motivation that you have to get up out of bed?
This may sound a little bit cheesy, but genuinely, it's helping and impacting students. It really fuels my cup. And sometimes I can get overtly passionate and sometimes a little bit crass, but it all comes with good intention. And that, coupled with this constant desire to be just 1% better each day, really allows for me to get up out of bed at crack of dawn, 3:45 in the morning.
That's great. That just shows how passionate you are about this. I think those are the type of tutors we need in this world. Those are the type of educators we need for everyone. If there's a question you would like to leave for the next guest, if you can think of anything.
Yeah, I would say, and this might be a unique question that you may have to give some context.
Sure.
How do you define your personal ikigai? And having the next guest talking about their ikigai and what that means to them.
How do you pronounce it? Ikigai, right?
Yeah, Ikigai.
Ikigai. Okay, ikigai. All right.
Yeah.
So we'll ask that and we'll see how the response is.
Awesome. Very good. This was an awesome conversation, Karthik, and thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you. Really appreciate you coming on today. And the audience is going to love this. Everyone's going to benefit from this. I benefited from this. And thank you again.
Absolutely. Keep doing this wonderful work.
Thank you.